2, 1. This is the first episode of the End of One for Game podcast. Actually, no, I don't think this is the first episode. We haven't figured out the order of these things yet.
We can just edit it out.
But
Take two.
Check out the comments, or not the comments, the description section of this video for a whole bunch of information that we want you to know. I'm actually not, I don't even know what's going to be in there, but just look at it anyway. Evan, why are we here today?
Well, today, Pokemon just updated their current expanded ban list for Cosmic Eclipse, and they got some pretty interesting cards. Most of them are uncommon cards, some of them are well-known cards, and other cards have not even come out yet. There seems to be one note I would like to mention that I notice is that there seems to be a pattern with Pokemon updating the ban list before every new set. So, before Unbroken Bonds, Hidden Fates. Before Hidden Fates came out, Jesse and James got banned. And now, before Cosmic Eclipse came out, one of the cards that is getting banned before it even is released is Island Challenge Amulet, which we will discuss later in the video.
Or we could bring it up right now. Yeah, so we have it queued up here on Bulbapedia. It is a tool, I think. Yeah, it's a tool. And when you attach it to a Pokemon, hey, why don't we just read it? The maximum HP of the Pokemon GX or Pokemon EX this card is attached to is reduced by 100. If that Pokemon is knocked out by damage from the attacks of your opponent's Pokemon, they take one less prize card. And this is considered a problem in the Japanese metagame. Do you know why that is?
Because recently they had an expanded tournament where a deck called Amulet Handlock won and filled many top spots. Many videos have already been made about the deck, so I will only give a quick refresher of the overall strategy. So starting with the card we just mentioned, Island Challenge Amulet, this card plays a key role in knocking yourself out by attaching it to an old card, Jirachi EX, which only has 90 HP, and because of the specifics of the card, it reads when this Pokemon is knocked out by the damage from an opponent's attack, you take one less prize card. Therefore, the prize card effect does not affect Jirachi, however, you still get knocked out. So you give your opponent 2 prizes, which seems pretty bad. Like, why would you want to give your opponent prizes? Well, there's an overall combo that is now accomplishable because of Island Challenge Amulet that synergizes with other cards that knock themselves out. So you give your opponent 5 prizes, then you play Reset Stamp, which shuffles their hand into the deck and then draws for a prize. So you only get 1 card, and Reset Stamp, which also played into the combo, is also getting banned. Then, since your hand is undisrupted, like instead of using N, you also get to play Surge as your supporter for the turn, allowing you to combo even more with cards such as Mars, which discard a card from your hand. So now you have no cards in your hand, you've got nothing going on, all you have are the Pokemon in your active, and if you manage to start with the Pokemon on your bench. Then you would use cards such as Chip Chip Ice Axe to ensure that your opponent would not draw out of the combo. So in Expanded, we have many more cards that can get you out of the loop or the lock than Standard. Cards such as common staple cards such as Professor Sycamore, Colress, and cards that have been out for years, or Shaman, Dedenne. So many more cards in Expanded than Standard, so it's easier to draw out. So we need to get Chip Chip to ensure that they do not get out of the lock.
We've got a pool of 8 years of cards to look at here. Black and White came out in 2011, I believe.
Something like that.
And we can't read the thoughts of the people who create these cards, over at Creatures, and we can't read their thoughts. And the people who test the cards, it's like a team of like 19 people, and even with a staff that large, you still can't possibly know every single combination. You can't foresee how the cards are going to be used. When you've got a pool of cards that's 8 years long, and you also have Standard to think about, so it's a challenge for them to think about both formats at the same time.
Which, piggybacking off that, that's also a huge reason why some of these cards are banned. At first, when you analyze some of these cards and look at why they were banned, it seemed like a panic ban at first. However, when you think about it, one of the key details that I realized, I went brain dead for a second, but you can just easily.
So looking at while Evan's getting his notes out. Looking at some of the previous cards that have been put on the ban list, we've got cards like Jesse and James, and Jesse and James is a card that disrupts your opponent's hand. This is kind of what they've been going for, right? Is hand disruption is a thing that's been going on in Expanded, and you don't want to do that. And then some other cards that were put in the ban list previously. Is there any other hand disruption that was just added at the last? Oh, yeah, Delinquent.
Jesse and James.
Yeah, that's what I just said. But yeah, you've got Delinquent, which is also a hand disruption card. So there is a theme here. They're trying to make the ban list so that the game is more fun to play. Did you find the place on your notes you were looking at?
Yeah, originally I had wanted to bring up about. I was gonna bring it up later in the video, hence why I got stopped up. But I noticed that Unknown from Sun and Moon Lost Thunder 91, which is the hand ability. Obviously, this card was banned in our format to keep up and try to synchronize with Japan and keep things consistent. But if you noticed, they banned Unknown, but we did not. And I'd noted down that this card never really made an impact in the expanded format in the US. However, Unknown hand was banned previously. So it seems that this ban is more of an action to demonstrate consistency. Additionally, this ban helps. This was the main point I wanted to bring up. Additionally, this ban helps prevent any future combos that may break this card, essentially acting preemptively and freeing up future card design. And I noticed that was like a hidden theme with these cards that on the surface it seems to be a panic ban in response to a deck that dominated a tournament. However, underneath the surface, banning these cards could open up future card design and give them more freedom. Instead of worrying about, well, we have unknown hand in standard, so we can't really make a card that might break this card. One really good example that I thought of was Forest of Giant Plants. Have you noticed that a lot of grass Pokemon aren't that strong? That was probably because they looked at Forest of Giant Plants and said, well, if we make a strong grass Pokemon, is this Pokemon going to be too strong because of Forest? So then they ended up banning Forest and then unbanning Shiftry.
Right, yeah. The ban list can on its face, yes, a ban list looks like it's making stuff, it's taking stuff out of the game, but really you're adding more to the game because you're making more stuff playable. Imagine if every game you could like reduce your opponent's hand to like one card, like. I don't even know what the defense against that would be. Like everyone would have to play like Zebstrika or
you can't get that turn
like
one.
that. Yeah, I mean you would have to play a deck just to counter being reduced to one hand when your opponent goes first, and you don't want every deck to have to play countermeasures to what looks to me like a boring deck.
I mean, the example of that was the very first banned card. Shiftry, not counting Slowking and Sneasel from back in the day, mainly just talking about Shiftry when Expanded first started. A big problem was that because you get all of your Pokemon removed from the beginning of the game, you had to run a Pokemon such as Wobbuffet, which by Barricade shuts off non-psychic type abilities, or you had to run, I believe, or Delta Stop or Omega Stop. I think it was Delta Stop, which prevented effects and abilities done to the Pokemon. So some people were legitimately considering running Pokemon such as Baltoy from Ancient Origins just to counter this deck that could beat you on turn one. We're bringing up the card. That's not. It's the Dark type one.
Dark type. Okay.
Other way.
Far left. Yeah.
Yeah, the Giant Fan ability. Even though it's kind of unreliable, flipping a coin is Pokemon determined that you could achieve the combo too consistently, therefore thought it needed a ban.
Right. I think that Pokemon's done a good job with keeping their ban list healthy, and keeping the format healthy with a ban list. I have data up here for the last expanded regionals. This was Hartford. Yeah, this was Hartford. So I'm looking at the day 2 decks, and you've got nothing overly oppressive. The most popular deck was Pikarom. I mean, what does Pikarom do? It's just, big Pokemon, a lot of damage. And Zoroark GX with Garbodor, that was the second most popular deck. Now, Garbodor shuts off abilities, but wouldn't you agree that Garbodor, the Garbotoxin Garbodor, is a fair card?
Yes, it very much so is because of its heavy retreat cost. It does not attack itself. It only has 100 HP, and it relies on having an item attached to it, which is you can use Field Blower, you can use Startling Megaphone, which really isn't played, but you can also use Faba. There's so many options to combat Garbodor, whereas some of these cards, you can't stop it. There is no counter.
And the other downside to Garbodor is that it is a stage 1, so you cannot play it right away unless you have Wally, which, thank goodness, was put on the ban list.
Wally is actually another example proving my point about banning certain cards in order to open up card design. Because we have Wally, we can't make certain stage 1s too powerful, such as Trevenant from X and Y. A lot of people are worried that I can easily just start Phantump, Battle Compressor, away Wally, play a bunch of Shamans to get the card that I need. All I need is one Versus Seeker. I've got my Wally, I've got my turn 1 Trevenant, and you're item locked. Have fun.
I remember when Wally was banned. I mean, gosh, it's probably been over a year now. I remember, and people were excited, like, hey, no turn 1 Trevenant, no item lock. You get at least one chance. One chance to get to play your items. So yeah, I'm glad that Wally was banned.
Do you want to start discussing our thoughts on each card that was banned?
Yeah. Before we get to that in the notes, I just wanted to. I'm still looking at this Hartford meta game, the day 2 decks. You've got 2 Sable Garb. And you've got 1 Regirock XY49. And I'm having a battery issue here. There we go. I just solved it.
Little hiccup there.
Yeah. So yeah, this recording equipment, it uses up a lot of battery, and I'm discovering this for the first time, because this is the first time I'm using the OBS Studio on this machine specifically. So now I know for the future. We're working out the kinks.
We're getting started here, folks.
Yeah. So what was I saying? Oh yeah. So Regirock XY49. It's a control deck. You played it at a regionals one time, didn't you?
I did. However, I had my own cheeky spin on it. I was actually that one person at Hartford, I believe. That one Regirock XY is actually me. I played a pretty cool deck with it. I barely missed day 2. Barely missed points.
What we're looking at right now is day 2 decks. So
I think
that is Michael Catron.
Yeah. Okay. Because they also, to be fair, they also had the graph that showed day 1.
Yes, there is, and I actually, in that thread on Facebook, I didn't see it, but
we just got our graphs mixed up.
We've got Toronto, we've got Dallas, we've got Portland, and that shows day 1 decks as well.
I'm also thinking of North Carolina. That was when I played Greensboro. My mistake. That's where I played, right? Because I saw 1, and I was like, oh, yeah, I'm the only one I can remember playing that cheeky Regirock deck. But then I remembered the regionals after there was also a Regirock.
With the Regirock and the Sable Garb,
additionally Shocklock, not to interrupt.
Shocklock. Oh yeah, Shocklock is there. Yeah, and Shocklock doesn't get hurt by the new ban. They're not really banning any of the critical cards, so you're good, and that's good for me, because I'd like to take Shocklock to a regionals at some point. But for Hartford day 2, the Sable Garb deck, you've only got 2, and then you've got 1 Regirock XY49, and those are control decks, but they're just a small slice of the day 2 decks. Imagine if we didn't have this ban list, and things that were oppressive and restricted your opponent's hand and stopped the game from being played, basically, were not banned. Then who knows how many day 2 Sable cards we'd have and stuff like that. So they are keeping they're keeping the not fun decks at bay, and I appreciate that.
I would like to make a correction before we get chewed out about it. The Regirock deck that was played ran Jirachi, and it was more of like a Primal Groudon kind of thing. It wasn't really
right.
control, but it did have Hoop in it. So it was more of, I'm going to load up a big attacker and then attack, and then you're going to prop my Focus Sash, which keeps me alive, and then I can just scramble switch. So it was like Primal Groudon, basically. But there is some, like, it's not a control deck, however, it did have Hoopa in it, and I don't think a lot of people like playing against Hoopa because it stops your GX and EX attackers.
And the thing about Primal Groudon, control or stall decks is that, again, they're not unbreakable. So even people who have can afford them and afford the tropical beaches, not everybody's going to play it. And if there is something that makes that deck too powerful, I'm sure we can call on the power of the ban list to save us. I'm looking at Toronto Regional. I'm not going to look at every regionals, but just to really drill my point down here, you've got decks like the Primal Groudon EX. We were just talking about that. You've only got one and this is not day 2 breakdown. This is the whole tournament. You've got one Primal Groudon EX, one Wailord Stall, one Sableye box, and then
random stuff.
And then pretty much all the decks that have like eight or more people playing it at this tournament, they're all just, I don't know, I'd call them just normal decks where you attack with Pokemon and you do damage, and they're not stuff that that prevents you from playing the game in the way that we're most accustomed to. So I'm glad we have this ban list. And did you have another thing you were going to look at the individual cards on the latest editions of the ban list?
Before we go into the individual cards, I was planning to bring this up towards the end, but Nick already started bringing it up, so I'll just go ahead and say this was in my conclusion, however. But I am most proud of the Pokemon Company because they are attempting to be consistent with Japan, and most importantly, they made a statement in their bans, in their announcement for bans, quote, "The expanded format, it currently has a reputation for being dominated by hand disruption decks, which many players dislike. Hopefully, these card bans will promote a more enjoyable environment and change that reputation." I really do appreciate where they're going, and the key word in that statement is reputation for being dominated by hand disruption decks. We have the results that prove they are not dominated by hand disruption decks. However, the problem is, like they said, the reputation. If you ask many players, they'll say, I don't want to play expanded because there's so many toxic cards out there and so many, I just don't want to deal with all of that. It's not fun. And Pokemon has recognized it. They show that they do care. They take notice of social media, and the players can make a difference in the community in terms of balancing. I might be taking this quote too much or focusing on it too much, but I truly do think it was necessary for the player base to hear those words from Pokemon. While expanded may not be dominated by control and disruption decks, as evidenced by multiple regional results, they still have the reputation, and thankfully Pokemon listened and they're taking strides to make the world a better place.
Man, I think we need to like add some power ballad music or something like that. Make the world a better place. But by the way, I have not read Evan's notes, so I didn't know that was coming.
I'm gonna be real. I made these today because obviously, I can't make these notes like super planned because obviously these just came out today. We want to make a video about it today. I'm literally sitting at home and Nick's like, "Hey, you want to make a video about the band list?" I'm like, "Okay." Starts cranking out a bunch of notes, and then
I can't
rolls.
believe he wrote this much in such short time.
I literally
Planned
cranked
today.
out 3 pages worth of notes. And we only talked about specific segments like the intro and the conclusion. But now I think is a good time to transition into the individual cards and our thoughts on the cards themselves, how we think the ban list will impact the expanded format, just our overall thoughts about the individual cards themselves. So I went in the order that Pokemon did. I copy and pasted the order, and it seems to be alphabetical order. So firstly will be Chip Chip Ice Axe from Sun and Moon Unbroken Bonds. This card, along with others, did not get a chance to be played because Unbroken Bonds did not actually have an expanded regionals. There might have been some cups out there that had Unbroken Bonds, but we really didn't get a chance to really see the effect Unbroken Bonds had on the expanded format.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Hey, TOs in the Virginia area and everywhere, I want more expanded cups.
I mean, to be fair, this was also when Nationals and Worlds was coming.
Oh, it was, yeah. Well, give us more expanded cups, but at a time that it's convenient for you.
My specific notes I had wrote down did not get a chance to be played because there was no Unbroken Bonds regionals, like I just said. Eliminating a control tool from the game follows Pokemon's goal to create a healthy and interactive environment.
I'm okay with Chip Chip Ice Axe being banned. Really, there are too many opportunities for your hand to go down to 0. Or here, let me reverse this. If your hand goes down to 0, there are not enough opportunities for you to, bring your hand to more than 1, right? You draw 1 card at the beginning of your turn. There's really not enough opportunities in this game to draw just 2 cards or 3 cards whenever you want to. So if they get your hand down to 1 or 0 and they chip Ice Axe you, that's pretty much the end. So I'm glad they put it on the ban list. Now I think this is instructional in good card design. So I'll tell you about a little game design anecdote that I always like to retell. So there's a fighting game that came out in the late 90s. I think it was Guilty Gear, and it's just a fighting game, right? You do attacks. You've got 2 people, on the left and the right hitting each other. But what they discovered when they were designing this game is that people could do combos and hit their opponent and just juggle them in the air, and that's not fair. So they invented a rule called progressive gravity, where every time you hit them, the gravity on that character increases. And so it prevents you from doing a combo infinitely. So what am I getting at? What I'm saying is maybe in the future when they make cards like Chip Chip Ice Axe, they can kind of foresee someone doing a combo infinitely. Maybe there should be a clause on the card that says, oh, by the way, you can't play Chip Chip Ice Axe next turn. Something like that. And having limitations on a card is something that the Pokemon card designers are familiar with. We have so many abilities, Pokemon powers, Pokebodies, that say, oh, by the way, this ability can't stack. You can't use more than one per turn. Actually, the best recent example of this is Dedenne GX, which would just be broken if you could use it twice.
Or even 4 times. Imagine Mewtwo and Zard and Pika being able to just drop, okay, Cherish Ball, Dedenne, Wilder, Dedenne, Dedenne, Dedenne.
A card that is on people's fantasy ban list is the Plasma Freeze Execute. But I betcha if it had a clause on it that said you can't use more than one of this ability per turn, like you just use it once and you can't do it with the same Execute or any other Execute, I bet you not as many people would be calling for that card to be banned. So something like that, where there's a limitation on the number of times or you can't use it next turn, that would be nice for Chip Chip Ice Axe, and maybe the card would be a little bit more fair. That's my take on it.
I think the better example, piggybacking off that, is actually Luzamine. Because Luzamine can get itself back. And a lot of people say it would be fine if it just literally said Luzamine cannot grab itself. It's just like Cynthia and Caitlyn. And I think that they realized when they designed Luzamine that the problem was, I can just get Luzamine and whatever. So they, I suppose, learned from their mistakes, or just whatever card design they're thinking. They looked at Cynthia and Caitlyn, a future card that is coming out, which basically says put a supporter from the discard to the hand, except for Cynthia and Caitlyn. You can't grab it back.
That.
And that's where I think my major points are coming from, that they're learning about the card design and trying to do better with card design.
You know what I think the card designers did? I think they watched Aladdin between now and Luzamine. Right? Aladdin rubs the lamp, the genie pops out, and what are his 3 rules, right? Free will, kill anyone, or it's like, I can't kill anyone, can't bring anyone back to life. And what's the 3rd rule? No wishing for more wishes. And that's what they should have done with Luzamine.
I mean, that basically goes into a lot of these cards, like the Execute. No more Executes. Like, alright, you can get Execute, but you can't have more Executes. Using it over and over and over. Oh, prop eggs. Luzamine, grab Luzamine. Luzamine, grab Luzamine. Chip. Oh, I'll just get Chip X back. Okay, Chip. Alright, Chip. Alright. But I think those are the overall thoughts on Chip. The next card we would like to look at is Flabebe from Sun and Moon Forbidden Light. And specifically number 83 with the evolutionary advantage, because I believe that there are multiple Flabebes in this set and in standard and expanded, because Flabebe is a card from Flabebe is from Generation 6 X and Y, so there have been plenty of Flabebe cards out there, and I'm pretty sure they're all forgettable. There hasn't been a notable one, but I said this is a minor ban, simply following this philosophy of eliminating hand control decks and improving the mood of the game. And this also goes back to my point of freeing card design and focusing more on preemptive bans. Rather than letting a problem happen, they identify a card that could be an issue, and then they take care of it. So this, in terms of relating it to the card design, this card came in Forbidden Light. So Forbidden Light has been out for over a year. They've thought about this card years back. They didn't think it was that big of a deal to say a card, oh, well, maybe we should help out evolutions by saying if you go second, you can evolve on your first turn. That might help out evolution decks and going second, because going second is a real pain right now. And that also, on a side note, ties into some other rule changes that will be discussed later.
I was just about to ask about that.
But the new card coming out, a Floette. I don't believe we have a picture up pulled
Is that
up.
Cosmic Eclipse?
I believe so.
Okay,
It states,
I'll put the Floette in
when
post.
you evolve this Pokemon, look at your opponent's hand, or I believe it's random. I can't remember if I think it's random. It's just like a Mars, however they shuffle it in the deck. But it's the same point that, I can just evolve, I can just play a Professor Elms or a Nest Ball or something, and grab Flabébé, Floette, drop Flabébé, drop Floette, get rid of a card. And it's going to be pretty minor. There's not going to be any crazy changes in Expanded. And I think that goes with a lot of cards that got banned, mostly because they either have been out and haven't been played, or they haven't had a chance to be impactful on the Expanded format.
I'm glad you brought up that Floette, because I was looking at the Floette currently open up on my PTCGO, and what I was actually looking at was the Florges, the one that's once during your turn you may flip a coin. If heads, put an item card from your discard pile on the top of your deck. I thought that was the broken card they were trying to bypass by banning this broken Flabébé. But okay, so it's about a stage 1 Pokemon that hasn't come out yet. Gotcha.
A preemptive. So the next card, Island Challenge Amulet. The card that caused all this madness. I simply said this card will not get a chance to be played as it is banned before release. So there's no way to really say how the card will impact the Expanded format, because it will never be a thing. Did you have any thoughts about it?
Just like Jesse and James, I think it's a fun card to get to intentionally knock your own stuff out, but clearly, and I don't follow Japan closely, right? I mean, I check on Japanese blog sites and Japanese Twitter accounts occasionally just to see if there's anything like really cool going on that's obscure that I can take advantage of, like with Buzzmosa decks and stuff. Like there's been a lot of innovators with Buzzmosa. I've talked to a lot of Japanese Buzzmosa.
They get real creative,
but clearly, this problem in the Japanese format has been so big of a problem, they don't even want us to try it out for, even 1 regionals. So, right, the card's going to come out in Cosmic Eclipse. Richmond regionals will have already happened, so we won't get a chance to try it out at any of the regionals, unfortunately.
I would like to also take note that I'm pretty sure this ban occurs after Richmond. Is that correct?
Yes, it is effective November 15th, and I'm pulling up the page. Yep, effective date November 15th, and Richmond is the first weekend of November. So
therefore, we will only have 1 chance to see Chip, Surge, and Reset Stamp. Yeah. We will only have 1 chance to see these cards shine. So, if you've got some crazy big brain, nasty stuff going on, time to just play it at Richmond and hope for the best. You won't get another chance to play your crazy deck that you've been brewing up.
Yeah, a little bit of personal growth and life philosophy tip here. The time is now. Whatever it is you want to do in your life, the time is now. Start from where you are. Don't wait for the right time to play that combo, play that cool deck you've been thinking of, because the time is now.
That the meme man himself, just do it. Don't let your dreams be memes. Don't let your dreams be memes. If you got something you've been brewing up, just throw it out there at Richmond.
I think Shia LaBeouf would be a good Pokemon player. We got to bring him on.
It's a little off topic, but I did have a point about playing what you want at Richmond. Even though you might be going for points, Richmond is the only expanded tournament that we have until Cosmic Eclipse. We literally just have Richmond and then Cosmic Eclipse. So regardless, the meta is going to be shaken up anyways. So you may as well just play whatever you want. Like, there's no meta manipulation here. It's just like the metagame is going to change. So this is your one opportunity to play what you want. And since it's a one tournament kind of thing, you shouldn't feel that bad about, well, I played a fun deck that I wanted to play. Expanded isn't that common, and there's only one expanded Unified Minds regional. So I had fun. I played a deck that I wanted to, and I'll just focus on the future expanded tournaments.
I'm looking forward to fun. Yeah, the metagame's going to get shaken up no matter what.
Surge. This is a card a lot of people have been talking about, mainly because it's pretty strong. It's strong in standard if you can use it. Mostly Pidgeotto and Shedinja have wanted to play it. I would like to note that some decks, when Unbroken Bonds first came out, Greenzard played a Surge. The list that won played a Surge.
I remember that. It was just by itself. It looked pretty weird, but hey, if it works and if it's weird and it works, then who cares? It's not weird. It works.
My notes were, this is the most impactful card banned along with Reset Stamp. What seemed to be an utterly insane buff to control decks, now suddenly ripped away from them. This card will only have one chance to shine and expanded at Richmond Regionals, and I believe it will in some form. However, we'll discuss that in a later video.
I'm looking forward to the fun that can be had with Surges at the Richmond Regionals, but clearly people who work for the company who've decided that this is not fun, think that it's a broken card, and they're probably right.
I mean, there's a reason that supporters can only be played once per turn. So when you have, this also goes yet again back to the card design. We have supporters that have always been limited to once per turn, so that they can afford to provide a stronger effect than item cards. Item cards will have a weaker effect because they can play as often as you like. Supporters can be stronger. But when you have a card that removes that limit, then you start to have a little bit of a problem. It's like you intended for these cards to only be once per turn. Now I can play 2 supporters a turn. And that kind of scares some people, especially with the stronger control supporters, such as Team Flare Grunt, Plumeria. There's all sorts of cards out there compared to our current standard format, where you only really have like Mars, Jesse and James. And in the future, a card that will be mentioned that I particularly like, Bellaba and Bryson Man. But I'll give those thoughts in a later video. That is a spicy card that I would very much so like to talk about.
One last thing about Surges before you move on to the next card. In principle, like on the whole, I'm not against cards that alter the rules. You've seen this in Magic the Gathering. I mean, since day one, is you have a rule that says, if the rule says one thing and the card says to do another thing, then you do what the card says. And many other, TCGs and games have that kind of rule. So, on the whole, I'm not against, getting to draw an extra card at the beginning of your turn, or or getting to, like, there are cards that let you attack twice. So this is something that happens in games, but it just turns out that the benefit of supporters is so great, right? And we've had supporters in the game for what, nearly 17 years now, and they were designed to be better than just regular trainers, and they were designed, so that they're better, but you can only play once per turn. It's just too much. Sometimes you can bend the rules with a new card, and sometimes it's just too much. And Surges is too much. That's all I had to say.
I do really like that they attempted to bring a comeback card into Standard.
Oh, me too.
A big thing that I had used to feel before Unbroken Bonds was, how do I come back from this game? It feels like you went first. How do I have a chance to win? Because, like, there's not... How many decks can reliably say, oh yes, I'm going to get a knockout turn 1? You're not getting a knockout turn 1. You're really not. So I am a whole turn behind, and don't even get me started on evolution decks. That's one of the reasons a lot of people don't want to play evolution decks. That's why you just stick to basic decks. They're more consistent, they're faster. Why would I spend time, deck space, and energy to set up one stage 2 when I can just slap down a Reshizard or a Mewtwo and just blow you up? But it's a shame that this attempt to help players come back was... I mean, it wasn't necessarily abused. It was just used in a way we didn't really want it to be. Like, I bring back the Green Zard that won a regionals in the past when Unbroken Bonds first came out. That's how the card should have been used. Oh, you went first and you got the first knockout. Okay, I can use Surge to use Double Welder to return a knockout. It's just a shame that it only went towards control decks, and that it feels like only control decks can use it. And I hope that they keep trying to make comeback cards. I just hope that we can find some sort of... we can find some sort of balance because of Teammates. That card literally says you can search for any 2 cards you want when one of your Pokemon was knocked out. We're pulling it up right now.
I'm pulling up Teammates because I have something to say about Teammates, but I have to make sure I'm reading the card correctly. Yeah, it says it works when your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's turn, which is different from playing Island Challenge Amulet on your own turn and then playing Surge and then just playing a whole boatload of supporters and control stuff. Teammates, the restriction is it has to happen during your opponent's turn.
So maybe for future card design, we can't risk making any cards that say when you are down on prizes, you get the bonus. Instead, we need to be saying you can play this card if one of your Pokemon was knocked out, in order to promote decks such as the Green Zard with the 1 Surge to say, like, hey, maybe I can include this card in my deck. Maybe if Surge had literally just said, you can play this card if one of your guys was knocked out. So imagine a scenario where you're in a Zard mirror. They went first, so they get to set up a Zard. You go second, so you set up a Zard. And then all they do is, okay, Guzma, knockout. Well, your opponent, you got knocked out. So as a punishment, because you went so risky and just threw your Zard out there to kill mine, fine. I'm going to play Double Welder and then knock you out. Of course, they would get to be able to use their own Surge Teammates S card. But the overall point is that it would deter greedy plays that basically say, oh, well, I don't care what's in my hand or about my board state because I'm just going to one welder, Lele, Guzma, knock you out. But then I knock you out. Do you have anything to really back that up? I don't think you do. I think it would deter those kinds of plays. And if you're going against a control deck, you could set up a cross division, and instead of, you could, in theory, if we errata Surge to say you can only play this card if your Pokemon got knocked out. This is all theory, of course.
You were about to make the exact same point I was about to make.
This is all theory. Please don't. I hope this isn't too confusing because we're talking about a card that does not exist.
This is Evan's fantasy.
This is my
Go for it.
I think instead of banning Surge, they should errata the card to say you can only play this card if one of your Pokemon was knocked out. I think that would honestly fix the problem. Because it would be on your opponent's turn, knocking out your Jirachi or knocking out your Mismagius would not trigger the effect, thus canceling this entire ban list, and just it would stop so many problems, in my opinion. One thing I would like to bring up is that they actually are bringing a card in the next set that promotes comebacks. The card is called Rosa, and I really like the card. I'll be getting some full arts, really pretty. It says, just like Teammates, you can only play this when one of your Pokemon got knocked out last turn. Search for a Pokemon, an energy, and a trainer, I believe, something along those lines. Helps you get the search. I watched Omnipoke's recent Cosmic Eclipse videos about which decks get better, and one deck that I do agree with getting better because of Rosa is Spiritomb. Rosa looks like an okay card, but it helps out Spiritomb so much. So maybe we could make more of these. You can only play this card when it's knocked out, and then that would allow you to have a strong effect rather than being able to trigger it yourself. I think that's the overarching problem with the card.
Ooh, Spell Tag. Spell Tag has that effect, right? You can't knock out your own Giratina or whatever, your own Weezing. You can't knock it out yourself and trigger Spell Tag. It has to be knocked out by damage. Mm-hmm. I just thought of a point about Lieutenant Surge's strategy. I had trouble articulating what I was saying earlier, but I was thinking about it. Is with Lieutenant Surge's, it's a thing that helps you bend the rules of the game, the one supporter per turn, rule. And there are other cards that let you bend the rules. So, for example, you've got Bonnie that lets you use a GX, more than once. You've got Gardevoir GX, which lets you attach multiple energy per turn. You've got Abyssal Hand, Octillery, which lets you draw more than one card in a turn. But all those things, there's a way for you to stop it. Typically, every card in the game that lets you bend the rules, there's a way for your opponent to stop it. If they're playing Gardevoir GX, there are ways to shut off powers with attacks and with abilities and stuff like that. And with Bonnie, you can bump their stadium, and maybe they won't draw another stadium so they can use it. But with Surges is just a supporter, and you pretty much can't, as the opponent, you can't stop them from playing Lieutenant Surges, and that's one thing that just doesn't sit well with me.
Also, you mentioned Bonnie. There is a Misty and Lorelei also letting you use your Water GX moves. but that comes at a cost of discarding 5 cards from your hand.
And it's restricted to just one type, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Surge lets you use any supporter. I think
Maybe if Surge was like Cyrus and it said you have to have like a lightning Pokemon type in play or as you're active, maybe that would be a little bit more balanced. I don't know.
if I was going to, I don't think Surge needs a ban, just a heavy errata. The errata that like, because it's a card game, you can't just go balancing cards like in a video game or something like Clash Royale. I play that game a lot. And you, instead of just banning a card, they'll like tweak it or they'll even rework the card. I think Surge is a card that needs to be reworked. I believe that if Lieutenant Surge's strategy said, if one of your Pokemon was knocked out by damage from an opponent's attack last turn, you may play this card, the card would be fair in that you would not need to ban it. Because you could also set up a cross division and it would not trigger Surge. Then, because you didn't take a knockout, like they wouldn't be able to play Surge. Like you can stop it. There's a way to stop Surge now. But you can't just go changing all the cards. And that's understandable. So we just have to learn from our mistakes and just plan that out better in future game design. Maybe Pokemon might see my suggestion and might, this goes back to the Pokemon, to evidence as Pokemon listening to the community. Who knows? Maybe some of you might agree with what I say and say, you know what, that is actually a really great solution to Surge. I wouldn't mind seeing that. And maybe Pokemon can hear this and say, maybe he's got a point. Maybe we could try something out with introducing more cards that say you can only be knocked out, or you can only play this when you're knocked out, like Teammates and Rosa. I really like those cards. And you notice that Teammates is not a broken card. Like they're even though you can search for any 2 cards,
there's a restriction on Teammates, right? You can stop your opponent from playing Teammates by not knocking out a Pokemon. Go on.
I mean, I really think that the being only able to use it last turn, like this turn, you've 1 turn to use it, and that's it. Surge is just, well, you're below on prizes, therefore you can use this card. So you would see your
Surges isn't specific enough.
Yeah, it's not specific enough.
Right? Because think about it, you're either behind on prizes or you're not. Those are the only 2 possibilities.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we talked about Surge. We got a lot more content here out of Lieutenant Surge's strategy than I thought we were going to. This is awesome.
I think it was more of like a lot of this I realized as talking about it, because like I've learned that you can compare cards to other cards and say, well Teammates isn't banned, and that's a comeback card, so maybe we can model Surge off of Teammates. That's how I got my idea of reworking Surge. I believe that you can model cards off of other cards to make them fair. This card is broken. Okay, we won't make a card like that again. We might have to put some more restriction on that. We might have to limit it a little more. Or Teammates was good. Maybe we can test the waters a little bit more. And but yeah, they brought Rosa coming soon. That is an example of a comeback card.
Right. And wait.
Enough about.
This is Cosmic Eclipse you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we had some pretty good points about Surge. Maybe things that people weren't thinking of, because a lot of thoughts about it, and myself included. That's just, oh my God, this card is broken. You just play so many supports in one turn. That just needs to go. When in reality, like, I think if you really thought about the card design and comparing it to other cards, and just thinking beyond the box, that hey, maybe we could errata this card, or maybe rework the card, or just learn down the road. But I think that's enough about Surge.
I've said everything.
Yeah, we talked a long time about Surge. I mean, mainly because it's a controversial card.
Very. If you read that next card, I'm going to do an equipment check here.
Yeah, another controversial card when it was in Standard, Marshadow from Shining Legends, 45. It was also a promo, SM85. If you didn't just start the game, you should probably know about this card, as it was crazy last year. It was used in so many decks. It started out as a card that seemed okay, mainly in Rayquaza Vikavolt in the beginning of the year. Like, okay, I'll play maybe one Marshadow. But then, as we went on, it started to be played in every single deck. And by the time we got to Nationals, the last event where you could play Marshadow, it was all over the place. And it was in the finals. It was in top 8. It was played in top 4. Like, you watch some of those matches. Okay, Mysterious Treasure, Ultra Ball, turn 1 let loose. Okay, well, I bricked from this, and I just lose. My notes were...
There was a Facebook campaign regarding Marshadow. I know you don't go on Facebook all the time. You're just telling me. Do you remember what that was?
Let's lose, because sometimes you could even brick yourself. But my main thoughts.
So there was a profile picture thing where you can like have a thing that adds on to your profile picture. So somebody made a thing that says "Let's lose, let loose," and then and you put it on your profile picture to support that cause. Right, like it's kind of like I support gay rights is a big one that you can add to your profile pic, but this is the cause that people decided to advocate for, is to get rid of Marshadow in the standard format. But then there was a counter campaign, which I changed my profile pic. It says "I stand with," right, hashtag I stand with let loose, and I added that to my profile picture for a week. But I thought that was funny that you had these two competing Facebook campaigns going on for several weeks.
I think it's really cool that the community can come out and have these kinds of things like, hey, we think Let Loose should go. Hey, no, Let Loose really isn't that a problem. Suck it up. It's even going to rotate, so stop whining. And they'd be like, no, it's a toxic card. You shouldn't be able to play it turn 1. And even they ban Delinquent. They've been banning cards that stop you from playing the game turn 1. Why not ban Marshadow? And today is the day it got banned. It finally got banned. The notes that I've written down: this card is infamous for its ability to disrupt your opponent turn 1. I am personally happy that I never have to worry about this card again. It was the reason I lost my win-in into top 8 at Collinsville. I got turn 1 let loose into an unplayable hand. I don't believe this card expanded all that much. However, I believe a lot of players will not miss this card at all. Thanks, Pokemon.
One of the fantasy cards people have had for the ban list is Skyfield, which I don't support, but if you think about it, Skyfield is an excellent opportunity to just pop off on turn 1. You've heard about the Exodia decks where you just play a whole bunch of Shaman this, Shaman that, and you just just get set up and try to deny your opponent. But anyway, Skyfield's part of it. So you've heard about a lot of these Skyfield decks where you just play a whole bunch of basics in one turn. And Marshadow is one of those cards that you can include. And even just as a one of in a deck, I mean, almost any deck, really. It's very powerful. And if you're playing Skyfield, then you're not wasting a bench slot. I remember playing Marshadow in standard decks where I've used up a bench slot for Marshadow, and oh crap, now I only have 4 slots left, and that could create a problem. But in an environment where you're allowed to play Skyfield, I can see why Marshadow would be more broken than it would be in standard.
There's no repercussion for playing Shamans and Let Loose. When making Skyfield, they intended it to go with Mega Ray, who had an attack, Emerald Break, which was 30 times the number of benched Pokemon. But it just took a whole different meaning by the time it's grown over years now. And honestly, like, I think it would be interesting if they banned that card, because I think you would add a dynamic to the game, because you just drop all these cards. Like, of course, it would severely hinder aggressive turbo decks. We're pulling it up right now. Yeah, it's another card that bends the rules. That, I mean, I think 5 is a perfect balanced number, but then you just play Skyfield. Okay, well, the 3 setup Pokemon that I wanted to drop are just extras. I don't care if my opponent replaces the stadium, because those cards are useless anyway. I've already used their effects. I'll just ditch those, and then I'll still have a full 5 bench with cards that I do want. And I think it would add a layer of skill that we didn't have in Expanded. I think it would make players more conscious their bench space. See, of course, we have Sudowoodo and Parallel City. Like, you could Parallel City yourself to get rid of Shamans and things. But Skyfield, it just opens up more possibilities. And overall, I just think it would open up a layer of skill in the expanded format. It would definitely shake some things up. Of course, it doesn't need to be banned. I just think it's one of those interesting debates and thoughts. Like, what if Skyfield was banned?
Yeah, I'm pulling up Magnezone. Yeah, here it is, the Magnetic Circus thing. Skyfield is not on our list. Skyfield is not on our list of cards. Yeah, okay, let's pull up this shiny one. Skyfield is not on our list of cards, obviously, because it's not on the ban list. Oh yeah, there's a super shiny one. That's what you meant. Yeah. Cards can either be physically shiny or they can be shiny forms, like in the video game. Yeah. So Skyfield. Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this. Skyfield's a fun card to talk about. So the thing with Skyfield. I'll say Magnezone first. The thing with Magnezone or Inferno Fandango or stuff like that.
Blastoise, Archies.
Blastoise. Blastoise. Great. Is like when I in a normal game, like most of the time, when I am playing a card, when I'm playing an energy card, right? I mull over, right? It's painstaking detail and levels of thought here. I think about every single energy attachment. But if it's the shiny one, the good one. There we go. But if I'm playing Deluge Blastoise or Magnezone from Ultra Prism, like, I can just attach energy and I can be a little bit more carefree about it. So, I don't have to think about it. Same thing with Skyfield. I've got this Marshadow, I've got this Shaman EX, I've got this Dedenne GX. Well, if I've got 8 slots on my bench, well, holy crap, man. I mean, who cares about the consequences? I've got I've got as much space as I'll ever need to play these Pokemon that are like one-time use things. So that's one of those ways in which I think Skyfield just affects the game, and why some people think it should be banned. In advance, like, I don't really have a lot of strong opinions on what should be on the ban list, but I definitely see their view when people talk about banning Skyfield. But Skyfield, going back to Surges, it's more fair than Surges, because with Skyfield, it's a stadium, and there's one way to counter a stadium, and that's to play your own.
I like to counter that by saying, because it's an insta-playable, the difference between Blastoise, Magnezone, and other Rain Dance effect Pokemon that bend the rule, and all the root cause, they both bend the rules. The common denominator is bending the rules. Skyfield's an insta-playable. It can be played on turn 1.
Ooh,
all I have
point.
to do is just drop it. I had to get my hand down to 0 to play Archies. Or use their tradition. I can either use Rare Candy or maybe like Dust Stone for certain Pokemon, or just do the traditional route. But Skyfield, I can just play it. I can just throw down some Shamans. So why should Skyfield get to be an insta-playable and bend the rules, while other cards have a condition on them, or a requirement, or a limitation, as where Skyfield does not?
Right. Maybe Skyfield and Archies, maybe they need something on them that says you can't play this card on the first turn of the game, or something like that. But that's a little bit generic. That clause could apply to many powerful cards in the game.
I think that also rolls into, if we're talking about bans overall and changes to the game, people have suggested no disruption cards turn 1, and they went ahead and they actually haven't made any big rule changes since X and Y about not being able to attack on the first turn. One rule change that is assumed to be coming, I believe it can be assumed that when Sword and Shield comes, of course it's not confirmed, but in Japan at least, it is confirmed that when Sword and Shield rolls around, you can't play a supporter in the first turn. So no more turn 1 Archies. So not only can you not hit turn 1 Archies, you have to get your hand down to 0, and then you can get your Blastoise. Whereas Skyfield, I can just drop it down, play a bunch of Shamans, whoopie-doo. And I think they have unbanned cards before. This gives, speaking of banning and unbanning cards...
Yeah, I think Shiftry was the first one that they banned and then unbanned.
Correct. So, if this turn 1 supporter ban goes into place, then does that mean we can unban Maxis?
Ooh, interesting.
Because their logic was that you could get out Omastar or Archeops and stop and lock out your opponent before the game essentially begins, before they get a chance to play. But now, you can't really do that. And now that turn 1 Maxis is out of the question, could you just... If you didn't want Archeops and Omastar in Expanded, I guess you could just... This kind of counteracts my point about game design, but because you eliminated your main concern and main argument for ban, and now you are eliminating that possibility, is it okay to bring that back? So, like, if we bring back Maxis, but you can't play at turn 1. Is it okay to make strong fighting type Pokemon that can be potentially used with Maxi?
It's a good thought experiment.
Just saying. I think we did get a lot off topic, but I think these are. I mean, the overall discussion is the ban list itself.
This is unscripted, so we can say whatever we want.
I just had the cards listed out, maybe in case we ran out of things to say, or just to provide a transition into discussion. Speaking of transition, I guess we could go ahead and talk about Miss Magius from Unbroken Bonds.
Ooh.
I said this allows for potential combos that were not previously possible. This card will only be played at Richmond. However, I do not believe it will impact Expanded that much. Do you think that'll impact Richmond that much?
So
just some quick thoughts.
My two favorite Miss Magius decks are where you blow up the Miss Magius on purpose to be behind on prizes, so you activate Karate Belt. That's pretty cool. Then that's my second favorite. My first favorite is where you blow up two Miss Magius so that you are in Beast Ring turn and you would just attach a bunch of energy to your Buzzmosa. I tested that deck extensively. As soon as I heard about Miss Magius Buzzmosa, I tested, and I seriously considered it for Worlds. And Beast Ring is not talked about in Expanded as much as it is in Standard, but it's still a good card in either format. And there are going to be Beast Ring combos, and there are going to be other combos that you can pull off by deliberately going behind on prizes early game, and that's probably what they're targeting for Miss Magius. Oh, and you get to draw 7 cards. I mean, that's pretty broken.
I think it's cool and neat that they had the idea to say, hey, I get a strong effect. In return, you can take a prize. However, they kind of... This goes back to, like, Surge and Skyfield. Like, the cards are now not really being used what they were intended for. Like, the cool combo, like, oh, I can use Mixed Magius to get a big hand and use Karate Belt. But it kind of turned into, yeah, I'm going to purposely lose the game. And I don't think that's really... I don't think that's healthy for the game. I don't think that you should have a bunch of cards that just say, yeah, I'm going to deliberately lose to pull off a broken combo. Like... And I think that's the root of that problem is that the primary win condition, or most common win condition, is prize cards. So when you have cards that like mess around with that, it kind of messes things up. And when you design a card, it's like, well, I didn't really intend for that to happen.
One thing I'll notice about Miss Magius is you've got a card that provides you this beneficial effect, which is the draw 7 cards, right? I mean, to a newcomer who's unacquainted with Miss Magius and the meta game and all those things that people do with Miss Magius, to someone unacquainted, they're unacquainted, they're going to look at this and say, oh, yeah, I get these 7 cards, but there's a downside, right? I lose a prize. But in this case, the downside is also the benefit. The downside is the thing you want. And I think this happens in multiple games, not just Pokemon, where you have a card that has a cost, but it does something really cool, but you give it a cost, and you think, oh, wow, I've made a balanced card. But that's not always so. Just because you give a card a cost doesn't mean that it's balanced. For example, in Yu-Gi-Oh, there was a card that said, I know I'm going to mutilate this, but there's a card that said, draw one extra card at the beginning of your draw phase. Your opponent gains 1,000 life every turn. Which just, well, that's dumb. Why would I give my opponent 1,000 extra life points every turn? There's a benefit and then there's a cost. But then there was a card that was like a continuous card, and it said anytime your opponent has an effect that causes them to gain life, turn that into a loss of life. So they would actually lose 1,000 life points at the beginning of your draw phase. And so what appears to be a cost to you to play a really cool effect is actually a benefit to you. So you're getting benefits on both sides, right? You're drawing an extra card during your draw phase, and you're destroying 1,000 of their life points every turn. And so I think we have the potential to see this in other games like Pokemon.
I think that's like, because all of these cards, a lot of other YouTubers are like, and it seems on the surface that this was just a panic ban. And it's like, Amulet Handlock went crazy, so we need to ban these cards. But I think we're going the extra step and digging deeper and analyzing the card. This is more about analyzing card design. Rather than telling you which cards are banned and like, because a lot of other YouTubers are going to just say, oh yeah, this card was banned, this card was banned, like that's the news. But I think this provides an opportunity to discuss game design itself. And that's what we got into with Surge and Miss Mages. Like, you can really analyze these cards and bring up some really good points that I don't think many people have really considered about a card. Like, in the fundamental game design of Miss Mages, we have a card, like Nick said, that you have a huge effect at the cost of something, but we didn't intend for that cost to be beneficial. Like, you turned it into a benefit. We didn't intend for this to happen. So now we have to, like, say, sorry, we can't really have this card, because you took a card that was supposed to be a win and at a cost, and now it's just a win-win. It's just a strong effect, but I wanted that cost anyways. It's just a win-win-win-win. And that shouldn't be a thing in card design. Did you have anything else to note on that?
No, I think I've said my piece about Miss Magus.
One card, the next card up, red card from X and Y, and it was also in Generations. So this card is pretty much the same deal as Marshadow. I just said the exact logic as Marshadow. I didn't think we needed to spend much time repeating similar thoughts. One note that I did want to bring up was in red card's time, it wasn't played that much.
Exactly.
And
you remember when this card became popular? Remember when it took off?
Mm-hmm.
When was that?
It mostly was expanded.
It took off in the Dallas regionals of January in 2018. There was a small group of people who were testing Zoroark GX decks, but with red card. And the red card was such a big deal that the dude who piloted this deck to, I think it was first place, he said in an interview, yeah, me and my group, we all tested red card in our Zoroark GX decks, but we had a rule where you couldn't test it online with the red card in there, because the content providers could be recording our matches, and this red card is so powerful, and we want to keep it under wraps. But so yeah, it was the Dallas Regionals in 2018 when that really took off, and it was largely ignored until then.
Yeah. Also, just like red card, it wasn't played back in the day. When Marshadow first came out, it wasn't played.
I remember when Shining Legends came out, I overlooked the card. I was more interested in Zoroark GX.
I think it was because N was in format. Because, like, you notice, X and Y completely rotated, and then it was, well, I can't remember if it was all of X and Y gone, but I know that N rotated, and then we had, I think Pennsylvania was the first regionals last year where Rayquaza Vikavolt played a Marshadow Let Loose, and then it was like, meh, okay, I guess you can run it in this one deck. But then Blacephalon played it, and then Pika played it, and now almost every single deck is now playing Marshadow. So it like creeped up. It's like initially the card wasn't good, and then now all of a sudden it's good. Like, wait, what? Huh? But my main thing is the same exact logic as Marshadow.
You can play it turn 1.
Yeah.
You can play it more than once per game. You don't sacrifice like prizes. It's not a supporter. You can, and if there was a clause that said you can't. I've played red card on turn 1 so many times. Like later in the game, it's not as useful. But if there was a clause at the end that said, oh, by the way, you can't play this on the first turn of the game, who knows? Maybe it wouldn't be on the ban list.
Then getting to almost the end, but just like Surge, I think this card is very impactful. Reset Stamp from Unified Minds. I'm not sure this ban was actually necessary. And I think along with Surge, this is one of the more controversial cards that would have expanded. I had said I'm not sure this ban is truly necessary, more so a panic ban in response to Amulet Handlock. Since we still have cards such as N and Ace Trainer, there are still ways to disrupt your opponent's hand. This card will be played at Richmond and then just be another leaf in the wind.
I don't want to see N get banned. N was my favorite card. It was my favorite card well before we named this YouTube channel.
And the team. N-1 4 game. Like the card, like being able to pull off some crazy stuff. We pull off crazy stuff. We make crazy things happen. N-1 and the card reset stamp. They make crazy things happen.
And yes, before someone posted in a comment, yes, N is a supporter. So there you go. You've used up your supporter for the turn. Reset stamp, well, you can keep on doing stuff after reset stamp and you still have your supporter for the turn.
I mean, one gripe I could say is, well, you're going to Surge, and then you're going to end them down to 1, and then Mars.
You could do that.
But I think the key was that reset stamp only affected your opponent, not you.
Oh, interesting.
I think that's why they said maybe reset stamp needs to go. Because if we Surge, we have to end before we Mars. We have to disrupt the hand and put it to 1 before we can Mars. So, are you going to get the Mars in that 6 cards?
You might not.
But I do think this card will be played at Richmond. It's so good. You can do your N effect, like you go down to 1 prize, you can reset stamp and Sycamore, get more cards, or Colress, or one key use for it is with Sable Garb. Through testing, I'd like to be able to use a supporter, use like maybe Surge, Flare Grunt, Plumeria, and Stamp. Or Surge, Flare Grunt, Reset Stamp, Mars. Like, by having Reset Stamp, it opens those combos up. Whereas if we didn't have Stamp, I would have to say, alright, Surge, and maybe get the Mars. It's just like we said earlier. There's less combos you can open up with Sable Garb, and A lot of these cards do hurt control decks a lot, specifically Chip Chip, Surge, Red Card, and Reset Stamp.
I don't think Reset Stamp. This is a ban card I feel the least about. I don't think Reset Stamp ban would be such a big deal. But just you've got ways to lower your opponent's prizes, deliberately, and so I think that's what makes Reset Stamp broken. Otherwise, I think there are other cards on the ban list that merit it more than Reset Stamp does.
One thing I'd like to know is the only reason I would run N over Reset Stamp is that N is more flexible and provides more uses, as in I can draw while disrupting you. But when you have a card as an item that specifically fills the role of disrupting your opponent, you have to say, well, why am I playing N? I think N just needs to stay. I think N needs to stay, and it would be fine for Reset Stamp to go. N is much more balanced, and it's much more versatile, whereas Reset Stamp is more this straightforward and used in the wrong context. But yeah, Reset Stamp is not that big. And I believe the final card is Unknown Sun and Moon Lost Thunder, specifically 91, The Hand.
I actually, this is the one I know the least about. I'm not sure specifically why this one was banned.
I had noted, my initial notes were, this card never really made an impact in the expanded format in the US. However, Unknown Hand was banned previously, so it seems that this ban is more of an action to demonstrate consistency along with Japan. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, this ban helps prevent any future combos that may break this card, essentially acting preemptively and freeing up future card design.
Sure, I think that's fair. Yeah. There are certainly with expanded. Well, so we've seen Unknown Hand decks win in standard. I mean, they're so rare, but you can bring your hand up to 35 in standard. So certainly with a larger card pool, there are ways to stall the game out long enough for you to get your hand to 35. Resource management or Rangaroo is still legal, so whatever you're using to get your hand bigger, you have ways to get those cards back. VS Seeker is legal and expanded, so there's ways to get stuff back out of your discard pile that helps you get your hand bigger. So, you're keeping track of 8 years of cards. So, I mean, if they're doing this preemptively, just in case a super broken combo could come out, yeah, I guess that's okay. I don't feel strongly about that, but hey, maybe, yeah, there's this combo that has yet to be discovered, and they need to do this preemptively.
Maybe they have a card that they're brewing up right now, maybe in a future Sword and Shield set, because Sun and Moon is ending soon, that makes this card broken. We just don't know yet, and that's where my thoughts think that instead of just solely, on the surface, this card is banned to keep up with be consistent with Japan. However, these are my original thoughts of why it should be banned.
So this ban list, we just got it today. We were excited to to share our thoughts on it, and so I've been playing the game for quite a few years. I won't say how long. I don't want people to know my age, but I've been playing the game for quite a few years, and I remember playing Yu-Gi-Oh back in 2002, where they had like a forbidden list, or not a forbidden list, a limited list, where you could only play one or two cards, copies of a card in your deck. And then, like, I want to say in 2004, maybe they had the forbidden list where you could play 0 of those cards in the deck. And I thought about it, having played Yu-Gi-Oh. Excuse me. Having played Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon, that it was really cool that Pokemon, that the people who designed the game, they were so good at it that they didn't need a ban list, right? Whereas Yu-Gi-Oh needed it. They had these broken cards. I mean, just if you think about some of the cards that came out in the first Yu-Gi-Oh sets, I mean, they were just ridiculous. Like, what were they smoking when they came up with this? Like, Raigeki is a card that people are familiar with, where it just says destroy all monsters on your opponent's field, and that's literally it. There's no cost to it. It just says destroy. Like, I mean, what kind of game do they think?
The legendary Pot of Greed. It allows me to just draw 2 cards. The amazing Pot of Greed, while we have Judge Whistle that says draw a card. See, in Yu-Gi-Oh, they would look at Judge Whistle and say, excuse me? I can just draw a card with no repercussions? And then over here at Pokemon, we're just like, Judge Whistle, okay. Okay. It's alright. It's alright. I mean, it's alright, but Acrobike, wait, you can look at the top 2 and grab one? That's even more busted than Judge Whistle. I mean, we play it, but it's like not broken. We like to play it, but And sometimes we don't even play it in every deck. It's like, wait, you don't play this in every deck?
Yeah, it's not like Pot of Greed.
No. Oh, we have Howl that draws 3 cards. It allows me to draw 3 cards. Wait, this card isn't busted? You just draw 3 cards? Oh my goodness.
Hey, speaking of obscure cards, I want to see Hala. I want to see Hala played. That's going to be the busted secret card for Richmond. Someone do your GX and play Hala. Get 7 cards.
Oh man. Turn 1 cross division?
Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking about. I was thinking about it earlier this morning. That's a GX attack that you use early game, and then once you've gotten this huge advantage from cross division GX, then you play Hala next turn and get fresh new 7 cards.
Just beat the basics before they beat the stage 1s before they even evolve. Just go, hey, I don't. You need to evolve. I'll just get turn 1 Archies, and I'll just cross division. Goodbye, Zoras. Adios. Goodbye.
So remember, when this becomes the next big thing, we were the ones who recorded it first and put it out on the internet there for someone else to take our idea and run with it.
Oh man!
And that's my philosophy. I know that not all of my ideas are good ideas, but if I can just be one source of inspiration to make a semi-decent idea for someone to just take that and roll that up with something really good and act on it, man, that means the world to me.
I mean, isn't that the same thoughts we had with bringing up Surge? Like we had like if hearing us talk about how our thoughts on card design and reworking Surge, our example of reworking Surge, maybe if it might not be a direct impact of anything, but maybe if we could just change some perspectives on card design in the Pokemon community, or if Pokemon themselves watch our video and say, hey, maybe they got something going on. Maybe just one person listens to what we had to say and be like, I think that's a good idea. I think they have a really good point about that.
Having an audio issue here.
I noticed when you were talking about Yu-Gi-Oh, you said you were impressed that Pokemon did not need a ban list. But to be fair, to To be fair, we do have a rotation rather than you can just use cards forever.
Right, yeah, and that's why. Yeah, so I was talking earlier about what was I saying? I was saying, I was impressed that Yu-Gi-Oh had a ban list, and Pokemon did not need it. I was complimenting, how good I think the people are who designed the game are, and still trying to resolve this audio issue. Okay, yeah. My microphone's picking up. Okay, yeah, my we had a power supply issue. Hey, these are kinks we just have to work out. Yeah, so the game was just designed so well they didn't need a ban list, but unlike Yu-Gi-Oh, they've got set rotation, which they've been doing since 2001, and they didn't need a ban. Think about it. So and by the way, the early game was just so broken, like Professor Oak from base set. It was not a fair game in base set, as nostalgic and whatever as you want to be about the first 3 sets, the first 150 Pokemon. Come on, the game was not healthy back then. It was a fad. People were going to buy the cards, and that's pretty much it. Money.
Zard.
Charizard, yeah.
Haymaker. Blastoise.
But yeah, so you've got this paradigm like from 2001 to okay, I'm looking at my microphone again. I'm still recording. Thank goodness. So from 2001 to I think 2014, 2015, you didn't need a ban list, and it worked out great. And for standard, I don't think we've ever had a ban list except for the Lysander's trump card, which right, as just go back to my earlier point. It's a card which bends the rules, or it seriously affects how the game is played. A component of the game is decking out, and Lysander's trump card got rid of that, and that's why it needed to be banned, and that's why that was the one ban in standard. But with expanded, you've got a large. So with rotation, set rotation, making bans not needed. Well, now we're dealing with expanded here. We're dealing with expanded bans. The card pool is huge. But I don't know. I was going somewhere with that, but I've just been proud that Pokemon's my preferred game, and it didn't need a ban list, whereas Yu-Gi-Oh did. And that's because I think the game was designed better, but also because of the format rotation every year.
I mean, I feel like there's a reason these games, such as Magic, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh, have lasted so long. In the early days of expanded, like when the early ban list started, I remember hearing people say that they need to be more preemptive on bans, or they need to be more active on bans. And I feel like they really are trying to do so. And I think that they want to avoid panic bans. I really do think they want to avoid panic bans. Because I feel like in other card games like Yu-Gi-Oh, they'll have panic bans when something dominates a tournament. I don't play those games. I played a little bit of league-ish stuff. Like I would go to my local card shop and play Yu-Gi-Oh. I never played in any big tournaments, though I have paid attention to a couple ban list videos where they discuss something that got recently banned and their thoughts on it. But to me, it seems like other games are more willing to panic ban, whereas Pokemon is not. One key difference is between Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon is that they limit some cards, like you mentioned earlier. Whereas Pokemon, you can have 4 of no matter what. I think one of the reasons why they want to keep every card being able to be played at 4 is because a lot of times, a lot of these cards don't need to be played 4, like a quantity of 4. Like, you only need, like, 1 Marshadow. You only need like 1 or 2 Surge. So,
But if somebody wanted to play 4 Marshadow, please forward that deck list to us. Our email address is in the comments.
a lot of people joke about, oh, I'm going to play 4 Marshadow. Oh, you're going to ban Marshadow? Alright, fine. I'll play a whole deck full of Marshadow. I think technically, well, you could play 4 Marshadow and 4 Marshadow GX. So just Shadow Punch your opponent to victory.
The Marshadow with the good attack is the Unbroken Bonds one. The one that removes stadiums. That's the good attack Marshadow.
Red Knuckles.
Red Knuckles.
But it's one of those, well, I was already playing only 1 or 2 Surge, so okay, that doesn't really... And especially in Expanded, where most of the bans are taking place, you only need to play 1 or 2 supporters, because you're Versa Seeker. So, it's like, oh, I only need... I can use more deck spaces towards other cards, and just be really thin on the supporters, and just run 4 Versa Seekers. So, joke's on you, I was already running 1 or 2 Surge.
I think we've gone through the entire ban list.
Oh yeah, we have.
Any final comments before we sign off?
Just to reiterate about the ban list updates demonstrate that Pokemon is taking strides to promote synchronization with Japan's formats. Some other sources have mentioned that this could be a hint or evidence that Pokemon is trying to completely synchronize with Japan by the beginning of the Sword and Shield era. I was typing this out, and that was one of my final side thoughts. This could be like a bonus segment.
We've had rumors that throughout the years that Pokemon is going to sync up the release dates for new sets with Japan, and it's never really happened. But we've heard rumors about it every year, but you know what's a lot more feasible is syncing up a ban list. That's a lot easier to do than setting up your release dates to be the same internationally every day. So who knows? That could maybe happen.
We've seen the ABC cards. When usually Pokemon has been fine just reprinting cards, but then what kind of happened was like cards like N had been in Standard for years and years and years. And it stays and stays and never ever goes away. Because just when we thought it was going to go away, Fates Collide brought it back. And I think they realized instead of bringing back cards and keeping them alive, we could just give this stamp on them and say, oh, well, we made a new art for a card that you can use in your deck to bling out your deck. But that doesn't mean it's gonna stay in Standard. I think the big thing was N and Shaman when the original reprint Best of XY collection came out. Everyone was freaking. It's like, wait, is Shaman gonna be here longer? Wait, you're telling me that this is gonna be here even longer? But then Japan started putting the stamps, the ABC stamps, on cards, and you'll see on those kinds of cards it'll have A, B, or C on them.
Yeah.
They did that with Tapu Lele when they made the promo. It's like, wait, is this card going to be out for longer? No, it's not. Don't worry. It's not going to be out for another whole year or two. Because it essentially defeats the purpose of a rotation, doesn't it? Like, the main strength of Pokemon not needing a ban list is because of rotation. Yet you're keeping N, Shaman, and Tapu Lele in the format. like, and then they finally ended up bringing the stamps, just like Japan did, and I think that was our first hint that Pokemon was trying to synchronize. I think that's one of the strongest arguments that Pokemon is going to sync up with Japan. And now, with these bans, their overall thing in the beginning was Japan banned these cards, we are too. And then they stated why Japan had banned them. And they went into promoting a healthy environment, all the things that we already stated. I don't think we need to repeat those over and over. I think we've proved the points. But I think that's really all we had to say.
Yeah, I think we're ready to sign off. All our info is going to be in the descriptions. Like and subscribe.
Aridos. Goodbye.